All right, everybody, how y'all doing? It's good to see everybody. I just finished up with my daily office hours, and I appreciate everyone who decided to step in and or pop in and say hello. Like that was super cool, and I really do appreciate it. Remember, it's mandatory, which means that it's required that you come into one of those each day, or not each day. I'm so sorry. Every week, I need to see you once per week, face to face. Even if you're not webcam, just come in, say hello, check up with me, make sure we're where we need to be. So what this is, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to highlight kind of what we talked about for our student-led portion of last week's discussion. Because we had some really awesome things we decided to talk about. And I want to really bring that to everybody's attention and pay some homage to that, all right? So we're going to go ahead and jump into that. Before we do, just a reminder, you have this week's discussion points. The teacher-led discussion is due at 11:59 tonight. If you have not done that, you need to do that. I'll check it again at the end of this video, and we'll see who's done it, who hasn't, and kind of see where we need to go for that. Again, I apologize for the lighting atrocity that's happening right now. I'm recording in the middle of the day, and I have a skylight in my office to keep me from being super depressed, but it also comes directly down onto where I sit. If I were smart, I would do this at night, but I don't feel like doing this at night. Let's get started. Cool. So this is what I see whenever I check this out. Let's look at some of the questions that we got. Mahalia, why do you think Layla was missing Tariq so much? Great question. She has a connection with him, Lamaratu says. And they're best friends, right? And he protects her. And he's a super important person. Thank you, Marco and Raphael, for bringing that up. Lamaratu says she's confused on why Hakeem told Layla it's a good time to be a woman in Afghanistan. That's a great question. Will clarified by saying that I think this is how women in Afghanistan have more rights and opportunities now than they did 20 years ago. Accurate. People are beginning to warm up to the idea of letting women be more open or public in public. I think that line is supposed to be called to our attention. I'm glad you did, because it's a great time to be a woman in Afghanistan is only working comparatively, right? It's, as opposed to how it was in the past, yeah, it's a great time to be a woman. But it's a man telling this to Layla, right? And it's still not great to be a woman in Afghanistan. It's still not like an equality situation. So I think we're supposed to see it from both directions, right? We're supposed to see it as both. Yes, it's better than it has been, but it's still not where it could be. And I think that's a pretty constant trend everywhere, right? Marco asked who the man was parked outside of Miriam's home and what could he want? Jalil's assistant, Jalen says. Will says they have a connection to Jalil. My understanding is that it is Jalil, right? Some time has passed since the beginning of the story, and now I think that is Jalil. He's from Herat. It's the same type of vehicle. And I'm glad we called attention to it and we were looking at it, because I think that's an important thing for us to pay attention to. Will says, who was the main person that taught Miriam how to act the way she does? Nana's the one. Ayman says that Nana was the one who taught Miriam how to act. Her personality changes when Nana commits suicide. And then her interpretation of Jalil changes. Lee said that Jalil might have been the one that taught Miriam how to act. Because Miriam, he points out, doesn't really have the same views as Nana. It's kind of, it's in between, right? And I think that's what we really start to see is both of them had an impact on who Miriam is as a person, but also their absence has an impact on who Miriam is as a person. I think that's really interesting. Jalen added that because she looked up to Jalil, like that shaped her, but also Rashid's abuse molds her and the way she sees women in society. I think that's a really interesting take. Like, I love that. Why didn't Jalil want to see Miriam when she came out to his house? Eamon asks. Shane highlights that Miriam is Jalil's shame, right? So he hides from that shame. Jalen points out that Miriam is his permanent mistake. He loves her, but not as much as he might have, right? I think also we have to take into account that every time Jalil has seen Miriam in the past, it was on his terms. It was what Jalil wanted to do at the time. And so her showing up outside of his terms, he shuts down. And I think that really highlights some issues with Jalil. Moving on, Shane asks a really well-formed question. A lot of the fear that Miriam experiences comes from Rashid. Do we think part 1 would have been different if Miriam was allowed to choose her own husband at an older age? Hayden said, yes, I think it would have been different. He points out that if she were older, her reproductive system would have been more developed and possibly able to handle a child. We don't know why she can't carry a child, but definitely wouldn't have hurt to have been a little bit older. She could have picked her somebody that would care and love her rather than abuse and neglect her. Like, yeah, would have been a totally different book, right? Raphael asks, why does Tariq mean a lot to Layla, where she cares about him more than her own brothers? Wahab says that Tariq means more to Layla than her brothers because she spent her life with Tariq, and she has only heard about her brothers. She has no memories about her brothers, which is, I agree with that. That's accurate. Tariq's always been there. The brothers were not, right? Formative age was Tariq was her presence, not the brothers. So she doesn't really have the same connection that her mother has. All right, now we've got a couple of questions nobody responded to, but we can still bring them to light. That's super cool. Wahab asks, how do you think the differences in the environments that Miriam and Layla were raised in will affect how Layla will grow up to be and how things will happen to her? I'm going to refrain from answering this because I've read the book and I know where things go, but I think that's a great question. I like this idea of looking forwards, right? Hayden, why would Bobby let their 2 sons serve in the military? Fariba, mommy's upset about it. I think the question you ask is answered by some of the cultural things. Like, I don't think it was a choice for them to go to war. I think even if it was a choice, I think the boys chose, and they are definitely a type of parents to let their sons do what they want to do. I think there was a certain glory in fighting for your country, and it's only in hindsight that we see now that they've passed away that, like, mommy starts to blame Bobby for what they did. I think it's complicated. As for the age range, like, yeah, they were young, man. That's just the way it is. Conscription at that age and would have been lower, right? So that's a good thing to highlight, because I think thinking about losing these 2 boys in the prime of their life is really, it adds weight to the situation. Lee asks, how would having a child affect Miriam's perspective of herself? Good question. I want to see us explore that more, maybe this week, or if and when Miriam comes back, because spoiler alert, she comes back. That feeling of self and that self-identity is going to be really important for who Miriam ends up being. I want us to focus on that. Jessica asked, what if Layla's mother really did kill herself? That's a good hypothetical question for us to ask. I think we get this really interesting parallel between Layla's mother and Miriam's mother, because both have ideas of suicide, but only one goes through with it, and we can see how that impacts the daughters in different ways, right? Like, that's a really good parallel to look at. And then our last question comes from Jalen, who asks, who is subjectively the worst person in the book? Is it Jalil or Rashid? I'm going to stay out of that one because I don't want to tint the way you guys look at things, but I definitely have my opinions about a certain character in this book. I think I'm still a little bit more willing to forgive Jalil, whereas what Rashid does is not good. Cool. All right, so that's what we got for this first round. That's not everybody in these classes, but that's everybody who submitted. If you did not do this, you can still submit these assignments. That's okay. You probably should. But good job, guys. You did a great job. I appreciate it. Well done. Go ahead and make sure you move into this week's teacher-led discussion. We need that to be done by the end of the day today. Otherwise, it will be late, and we don't want things to be late. So I'm not going to keep rambling. Great job. I appreciate you all. I will get back to you with another video shortly. Have a great day.